I never thought my life would unravel under studio lights and camera lenses, but it did spectacularly. 1 second, I was answering a harmless question from a talk show host. The next, I was blurting out the truth I had hidden for years. I'm in love with him. The silence that followed wasn't just in the room. It stretched all the way to my parents' living room in Ohio, where I knew they were watching. Their son, the one they thought would carry their pride like a torch, had just burned their expectations to the ground on national television. But this isn't a story about shame. This is a story about how, when the storm hit, he held me. Ethan was never supposed to be mine. He was everything I wasn't. Fearless in a way that made people turn their heads, confident like he belonged in every room he walked into. I was quieter, calculated, the type who stayed in the shadows because shadows felt safe. We met in college, in a town that was more conservative than it liked to admit. He was the star of the debate team. I was the guy writing op-eds for the campus paper, throwing stones from the comfort of my keyboard. He noticed me because I wrote about him at first critically, then with grudging admiration, then with something dangerously close to longing. "Do you always write about people you stare at?" he teased one day, his voice carrying across the cafeteria like it was meant just for me. I almost dropped my tray. That was Ethan, direct, unapologetic. And somehow he didn't let me run away. The live television confession wasn't planned. God knows, if I had thought about it, I would have stayed silent forever. But when the host asked about the most influential person in my life, I looked at Ethan, sitting in the audience, smiling like he owned the whole world. And the words slipped out before I could stop them. "He's right there, Ethan. I love him." Gasps, murmurs. A cameraman zoomed in on my face like it was breaking news. My phone vibrated in my pocket with a dozen messages I wouldn't check. My chest felt like it was splitting open, equal parts terror and liberation. And then I saw my parents' expressions on the studio monitor. My mother's lips pressed thin. My father's jaw clenched so tight I could hear it through the screen. They didn't clap. They didn't smile. They just turned away. I stumbled out of the studio later that night, the applause still echoing like a cruel reminder. The sky opened up as if on cue, rain hammering down, soaking through my jacket in seconds. I stood in the middle of the street, my whole body shaking, not sure if it was from the cold or from the reality of what I had just done. That's when I felt him. Ethan didn't say a word at first. He just walked straight into the storm, right up to me and pulled me against his chest. His arms wrapped around me, solid and warm, while the rain tried to tear us apart. I wanted to collapse, to apologize for dragging him into this chaos, but he wouldn't let me. "Look at me," he said, gripping my shoulders until I had no choice. His eyes burned brighter than the street lamps behind him. "You told the truth, and I'm not going anywhere." The words broke something in me. Maybe it was the years of pretending, of trying to be someone my parents could still love. Or maybe it was realizing, right there in the storm, that love could be strong enough to survive being rejected by the people you thought would never leave. Ethan and I became that couple in town. The whispers followed us everywhere. At the grocery store, an old woman clutched her cross like we were demons. At the gym, a group of guys smirked and muttered the word faggot under their breath. Even my old friends from high school stopped answering my texts. But every time I thought I couldn't handle it, Ethan would find a way to make me laugh. Once, when a stranger shouted slurs from a passing truck, he yelled back, "Thanks for noticing us. We'll be signing autographs later." His grin was so ridiculous. I doubled over laughing in the middle of the sidewalk, middle fingers flying in the rain. Still, nights were the hardest. I lay awake wondering if my parents would ever forgive me, if they would ever look at Ethan and see the man who saved me instead of the man who stole me. "Do you regret it?" I asked him once, when we were curled up in his tiny apartment bed, the sound of the radiator clicking in the background. He kissed my forehead like it was the easiest question in the world. "Never. The only regret I'd ever have is not holding you that night." It wasn't easy to believe him. Love stories like ours weren't supposed to last, not in a place where people voted against our rights, where churches painted us as sins, where family love was conditional. But Ethan believed enough for the both of us. And slowly I started to believe too. Because love like that doesn't fade in the storm. It shines brighter. It took months before I heard my parents' voices again. The silence was worse than shouting. It was like they had erased me, as if denying my existence would somehow undo what I had confessed. Ethan stayed by my side through all of it. He came with me to protests when the news picked up my story and strangers held signs both for and against us. He sat with me on nights I couldn't stop shaking, whispering that the storm would pass. He believed it even when I didn't. But love doesn't wait for permission. One night, after a long shift at the bookstore where I worked, I came home to find Ethan setting up candles in his apartment. His face lit by the soft glow. He looked both nervous and determined. "What's this?" I asked, dropping my bag, my heart already racing. "Us," he said simply. "We've been letting the world tell our story. I think it's time we write our own." He pulled out a small box, not flashy, not expensive, just simple and real. My breath caught. "I don't care if your parents never accept me. I don't care if strangers never understand us. I just care if you're still willing to stand with me, even when it's hard." His voice cracked, just slightly, but his gaze never faltered. "So, will you?" My answer was tears first, then yes over and over until I was laughing against his lips. The engagement didn't fix everything. If anything, it made the noise louder. The local news ran with the story, half calling us brave, half calling us reckless. Online trolls picked apart our photos, twisting love into something ugly. My parents didn't even call to protest, they just stayed silent. But amid all the ugliness, something beautiful began to bloom. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out with support. Strangers messaged me, thanking me for being visible, for saying out loud what they were still too afraid to say. And Ethan kept me grounded when I started to spiral. "Every storm ends," he would whisper when the world felt too heavy. "And when it does, we'll still be standing." The turning point came the night of my cousin's wedding. I almost didn't go, afraid of the stares, afraid of running into my parents after a year of silence. But Ethan convinced me. "Family isn't just blood," he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "But sometimes blood surprises you." We walked into the reception hand in hand, and the whispers hit instantly. My mother sat rigid at a table, my father staring down at his drink. For hours, I avoided their gaze, dancing with Ethan, laughing louder than I felt, pretending I didn't care. Then, during the slow dance, Ethan pulled me into his arms. "Forget them," he murmured. "Just you and me." I rested my head on his shoulder, and that's when I noticed my mother standing at the edge of the dance floor. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't even disgusted. It was something raw: fear, confusion, love twisted into something she didn't know how to give. For the first time, I let myself see her not as the villain of my story, but as a woman raised in a world that taught her love had limits. Maybe she didn't know how to unlearn it yet. She didn't come over that night. Neither did my father. But when we left, I caught her watching us with tears in her eyes. It was a start. Months later, I stood on a pier with Ethan, the sea breeze cool against my skin. The sun was sinking low, casting gold over the water. He squeezed my hand, and I thought about everything we had survived: the rejection, the storms, the endless nights of doubt. "We made it," I whispered. Ethan smiled, brushing his lips against my temple. "We're still making it. Every day." I thought about the boy I used to beta, one who hid in shadows, who thought love had to be quiet, secret, safe. That boy would never have believed he could stand in the open, hand in hand with the man he loved, unafraid of the world watching. But here I was, and maybe my parents weren't ready yet. Maybe the world would always have something to say. But Ethan's arms had become my shelter, his laughter my light, his love the proof that nothing, not silence, not storms, not even rejection could break what we had. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against mine. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of what tomorrow would bring. Because tomorrow and every day after, we would face it together. Love doesn't always win easily. It doesn't always come wrapped in approval or tied up with neat bows. Sometimes it's raw, messy, tested by storms you never thought you could survive. But when it's real, when it's the kind of love that holds you in the rain, that refuses to let go even when the world turns its back, it's unbreakable. And that's the kind of love Ethan and I had. The kind of love worth confessing under the brightest lights, even if it meant losing everything else. The kind of love that, in the end, gave me back everything I truly needed. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.